Now, as we reported, the Food and Agriculture Organization says that almost a quarter of Sudan's population needs urgent assistance as a result of months of flooding. Dr. Babagana Ahmadu is Sudan's representative of the United Nations and Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right. You know, when one looks at the statistics, I mean, they're quite staggering. And this has all come about because these have been the worst floods in Sudan in 30 years.
Yeah, that's right. This is an unprecedented situation. In fact, not 30 years, but according to the records, this kind of situation has not been seen for over 100 years, over a century. It has really devastated the agricultural sector in particular. Over 2.2 million hectares of cropland has been destroyed. 1.1 million metric tons of grains, especially sorghum, has been lost. About 150 people lost their lives. We have 108,000 heads of livestock lost. So yes, the devastation is very severe. As Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, we carried out an assessment on the impact of the floods in 17 out of the 18 states. And the situation is very dire. Yes, it has affected the food security situation adversely.
So what's the humanitarian situation that you're seeing on the ground?
Yeah, I think the situation, it's quite serious. Over 10 million people are at the risk of contracting waterborne diseases, and nearly 4.5 million at the risk of contracting vector-borne diseases. So we are now trying to see the form of support that we can provide to these very severely affected people. We have been to all the areas, especially the Blue Nile State, River Nile State, Khartoum State, and some parts of Kordofan, Sinar State, where we really had open discussion with the affected communities. And according to our estimates, we need about $70 million to restore normalcy to the affected areas.
You know, with floods, there's other problems that come with it, apart from just food, and that's waterborne diseases and things like that. Is this something that you're having to deal with on top of trying to help those that have been displaced and those that have no food?
That's right. According to the figures, 9.6 million people are already facing severe food shortage. So, and this is nearly 21% of the population in a very serious need of food. So we think unless something is done very urgently, the situation will get worse. These people, they rely on agriculture as a source of food and source of livelihood, and now they've lost almost everything. So we are now strategizing on how we can get them back to the farms to take advantage of the coming winter season to at least replant the areas, to clear the land, to restore some of the damaged irrigation pipelines, to provide them with good quality seeds and bring in some animals for restocking. So we are really in a very desperate situation to ensure that these 9.6 million people, the situation with these people does not slip into further very acute and very devastating food insecurity situation. So we have been appealing to the international development partners and the donor communities to see how best we can get support in restoring normalcy and getting food, making the people have access to food as soon as possible.
Yeah, normalcy in a very abnormal situation. Has COVID-19 further complicated things for people on the ground as well?
That's correct. Before the floods, we've been dealing with the issue of COVID-19 brought about, lack of access to the markets because of the lockdowns. The produce from the farm cannot get into the market. Food scarcity, it's all over. The prices have been skyrocketing, and the situation was further compounded by the fact that infrastructure for market access has been completely locked down. So we recorded a lot of food waste and loss across the country, and this is really, the situation is really very, very bad for Sudan this year.
I know that these are unusual flood levels, but floods are not uncommon. Was there no preparation for these floods, or there was just too much too soon?
Well, I think the floods, it took everybody by surprise. It defied all the projections, and the early warning systems. Nobody ever thought of this. So yeah, it took everybody by surprise. We fully know that Sudan is a disaster-prone country. Recurrent droughts or floods, but not in the magnitude in which we have seen it this year.
All right, focusing again on the people, especially those that have been displaced. Have there been any fatalities as a direct result of these floods?
Yeah, I think according to the records, we have about 150 people have lost their lives. But thanks to the efforts of the international development partners, some have started bringing in relief materials. We have got blankets and beds and sanitary items being brought in by some good development partners. So this is helping to ease the situation a little bit, but we really need a more rapid response in terms of restoring some of the damages that are done to the agricultural sector in particular. The sector, 80% of the rural people in Sudan, they rely on agriculture as a source of food, a source of income, and source of employment. So the damage to this sector, it's really a very big blow to the communities. We have, according to our estimates, according to our survey, the assessment, the rapid assessment, we covered 80 localities in 15 states, and we have seen that the food insecurity situation has really deteriorated in these areas, and we need a very rapid response from the international development partners.
Again, with lots of rains and floods, roads tend to get washed away and parts become inaccessible. Are you finding it difficult to reach everybody?
That's right. It was quite difficult, and we had to charter planes to get access to those areas. Some of these areas have been cut off, the roads have been washed away, the infrastructure for water control especially has been damaged severely. The houses have been destroyed, schools and hospitals affected. So really, it's a very, very dire situation. But we are hoping that in the next couple of months or weeks, we will get a positive response from international development partners. The situation is such that the Sudan government alone cannot handle this. Already, as you're aware, we have got socio-political situation, and this is compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic. We also have serious threats from the desert locust infestation. So these are really very serious blows to the impact of these shocks. I think are very severe, especially in the rural areas. So we need to join hands. We need to mobilize resources to restore normalcy to those areas.
What are the forecasters saying about the weather going forward? Is there still rains predicted?
Well, according to what we have been told by the weather people, I think the situation will be calm for the next couple of months. But it has really sent us a very serious signal to strengthen our disaster response mechanism. Sudan being a disaster-prone country, we should put mechanisms in place. So we are working very closely with experts to strengthen the disaster response mechanism across the country.
Is South Sudan affected as well?
Yeah, I think some of the neighboring countries have been experiencing the floods, but it's not in the magnitude that we have seen in Sudan. We have been dealing with the issue of disaster caused by the desert locust infestation in the neighboring countries, and we are currently at the very high alert in case of invasion from any of those countries, so that we can prevent the situation from deteriorating further. As you're aware, the desert locusts and some of these migrant pests and diseases, they cause serious threats to food security in many countries in the East Africa region. So we are fully prepared in case of invasion from the neighboring countries.
All right. I mean, so much to deal with in terms of natural disasters, as you're talking about locusts and these floods. But I suppose it comes as some relief that the transitional government has signed peace accords with the rebels, perhaps giving you greater access to people in need.
That's correct. I think the signing of the peace agreement is going to help in a number of ways in accessing those areas that are otherwise inaccessible, so that we can deliver humanitarian aid to those people. There are areas that have been restricted for a while, so we are working very closely, monitoring very closely the next steps in the implementation of the peace agreement to allow for humanitarian access to many of the areas that are in need of our services.